Hello, my name's Revenge, and with the honeymoon phase of Doom Eternal's release being over, I'm starting to think that Doom Eternal might have been kinda overrated. Now, before you get your pitchforks out and crucify my like to dislike ratio, hear me out. Doom Eternal is a very well crafted game, and it tends to really shine when everything meshes together, but, in my opinion, it is a subpar sequel to what was established in 2016. As months go by, more people are saying they like Doom 2016 better than Eternal. Why? Let's find out. Chapter 1. Overstaying Your Welcome. One of Doom Eternal's biggest criticisms is that certain encounters either overstay their welcome or are poorly designed. Prime examples being the entirety of the cultist base, purple sludge encounters, and the blood pit. It gets to a point where the encounters stop being fun and end up being a repetitive slog. Doom Eternal's encounter pacing is all over the place and just ends up being a mess where you just go, can this encounter just be over already? It's almost like they didn't learn from 2016 about being repetitive. Sure, the ever-evolving enemy and weapons sandbox throughout the campaign helps shake up the gameplay, but the repetitiveness just took another form. Because even a massive sandbox doesn't help if your encounters take forever to finish, even if you're playing well. It's especially frustrating if you die at the very last wave only to start all over again. Chapter 2. It's not challenging, it's annoying. It goes without saying that Doom Eternal has had some objectively horrible gameplay decisions. Case in point, tentacles and purple sludge, aka trial and error bullshit paired with arbitrary movement restrictions. Let's start with the tentacles. The tentacles are a prime example of why trial and error gameplay is hot fucking garbage. Unless you've played the game before and remember every single placement, and trust me, you don't, chances are you're going to get whapped and maybe even killed by a tentacle you didn't know was there. There's no indication of which holes have a tentacle in them, so you better have a quick reaction or psychic powers, otherwise you're going to be featured in the latest Doom Eternal tentacle hentai doujin. This problem is further exacerbated by the purple sludge, but we'll get to that later. For now, let's talk about the purple sludge itself. The most universally hated aspect of Doom Eternal are these ankle-high pools of Tinky Winky's late-night Taco Bell binge. I'm calling it diarrhea in case you didn't get the joke. This putrid pile of grape ape cock milk not only prevents you from jumping, but also removes your dash ability and greatly reduces your speed. Now, it wouldn't be so bad if it just removed the ability to jump. Hell, take the dash away as well. But the fact that it renders you mobily inept the moment you stick your toe in goes against the very nature of the game. Meanwhile, your enemies are not given such debuffs. This would be fine if it was just fodder enemies you had to deal with, but no, you're dealing with Arachnotrons and Hell Knights. This leads me into that point I mentioned earlier. Like I said, the game basically expects you to be psychic and know when something's coming. Like how the game hides tentacle holes inside the sludge. So now you have even less knowledge about when you're going to be a hentai porn star. Now, take that same scenario, put it in the art complex in a narrow-ass tunnel. Then put a surprise Hell Knight in there when you're halfway through. That's not challenging, that's annoying. It's not fun, it's objectively garbage game design. Chapter 3. Why bother putting these in the game? Out of all the things Doom Eternal has in excess, power-ups aren't one of them. Power-ups are probably the most underutilized things in the entire game. I could probably count the amount of power-ups in the game on one hand, and most of those power-ups are haste, the lamest one. It's likely that the power-ups were never properly balanced due to time constraints. This is going to be a recurring theme throughout this video, that a lot of things wrong with Doom Eternal are probably due to the game likely releasing in a rushed state. Chapter 3 Is Hugo Martin really Ryan Johnson? If you want a reason as to why 2016 and Eternal have such jarringly different tones and writing, allow me to point you to none other than Marty Stratton and Hugo Martin. Marty Stratton was the director of Doom 2016, and Hugo Martin is the director for Doom Eternal. The difference between the two is practically night and day. Doom 2016 took itself way more seriously, choosing to take itself into a scary and dark tone while also maintaining high-octane action and a tiny bit of cheese. Meanwhile, Eternal throws that out the window and opts for nothing but high-octane action, and even made a deal with the state of Wisconsin for an unlimited supply of cheese. Marty Stratton was one of the original id staff, being there since the original 1992 Wolfenstein. It's very clear from the get-go that Marty was going for a more grounded and gritty take on Doom. It didn't let the story get in the way of the gameplay, minus a few unskippable cutscenes, and while the locations weren't very diverse in 2016, much like the original Doom, it was definitely more cohesive and less jarring than the admittedly more diverse locales in Eternal. The monsters are also way more scary and less cartoony than what Eternal did for the designs. Marty also clearly had the intention of the Doomslayer being the betrayer, because if you read the codexes, you can see from the testament that the Doomslayer is the sole survivor of the Night Sentinels, my citation being the most iconic of all the testaments, Slayer Testament number 1.
In the first age, in the first battle, when the shadows first lengthened, one stood, burned by the embers of Armageddon, his soul blistered by the fires of hell, and tainted beyond ascension. He chose the path of perpetual torment. In his ravenous hatred, he found no peace, and with boiling blood, he scoured the umbral plains, seeking vengeance against the Dark Lords who had wronged him. He wore the crown of the Night Sentinels, and those who tasted the bite of his sword named him the Doomslayer.
He was probably their former leader who damned himself to perpetual torment after the Armageddon of Argent D'Nur. He, at some point in time, made a deal with the Dark Lords, and eventually got betrayed. To seek vengeance, he assaulted the Umbral Plains with ravenous hatred. It's implied that Doomslayer felt guilty to a point that he sentenced himself to perpetual torment to seek retribution against the demons, and maybe himself? Tainted beyond ascension sounds like he committed a terrible crime or was part of the D'Nur's destruction. The Testament creates an image that the Doomslayer punishes both the demons for wronging him and himself for reasons that are not clearly mentioned. It is possible that since being the prime member of the Night Sentinels and responsible for the protection of Argent D'Nur, Doomslayer might feel guilty because of his inability to stop the invasion. This seemed like a solid foundation for an action-packed story of hatred and redemption for a flawed warrior turned rage-fueled demon slayer. How does Hugo Martin build upon this? He fucking doesn't. He tosses Marty Stratton's vision into the fucking garbage in favor of his own. Regardless of how jarring the subversion of expectations would be, Hugo Martin is primarily a concept artist. Doom Eternal is actually the first time he's ever written and directed for a game, and it shows. Not only is the original story intent completely thrown out the window, it's replaced with some shitty Saturday morning cartoon fanfiction. And that's not even an exaggeration. Hugo Martin outright admitted to using He-Man as a source of inspiration for Doom Eternal. I think people have picked up on the fact that I'm a huge He-Man fan by the fact that Doomslayer raises up his sword, not unlike I have the power. We actually took a look at lot of the illustration art used for the box art for the original He-Man toys. The pacing and overall existence of the story is all over the place. It's like the game doesn't fucking know if it wants to have a story or not. Then there's the fact that Doom Eternal has a heavy use of cutscenes, whereas in 2016, the story was completely optional. Rarely any cutscenes or interruptions to the gameplay. Sure, Eternal's cutscenes were skippable, but 2016 didn't need them to succeed. The gameplay was the star of the show. The cutscenes are utterly forgettable. And if you skip them all, you would lose nothing of value. Oh, and by the way, do you know all those interesting characters that were established in 2016? Yeah, everyone is not what you thought they were. Doomslayer's Doom Guy from the original games, Samuel Hayden is the Seraphim, and Vega is God. Fucking God!
You are here to restore order to my world. With the demons in control, you understand the threat they pose to all my creations.
We have been allies for some time now. I knew who you were the moment you set foot in our world.
A rather huge fucking plot hole, because if that's the case, we destroyed the original fucking copy of God in Doom 2016, and Samuel Hayden was perfectly fine with sacrificing him.
The process is complete.
Thank you, Vega.
My brain is fucking hurting, and my autism is flaring up like a bad rash. This story is absolute retarded garbage. Seriously, how the fuck do you make a horrible continuity error like that? That is just pure writing ineptitude of the highest level. And this is just in addition to that sort of story element just being plain fucking stupid. Like, an AI is secretly God in hiding. Like, that... Oh god, my brain is fucking hurting from how stupid it is.
Oh, I'm coming. I'm done here. I fulfilled my purpose. I ain't need to see no more shit down here.
But it wouldn't be fair of me to just say that Doom Eternal's story is retarded garbage without backing it up. So I'm gonna back it up. Let's start with the first level.
My soul remains guarded. You can't.
From the perspective of a first-time player, explain what is wrong with this picture. Who the fuck is this? What the fuck is that? Why are we even here? And sure, someone's probably going to say, well, just read the codex. The issue with that is in storytelling, there's one golden rule. Show, don't tell. The reason why Doom 2016 gets away with this is because the story in Doom 2016 was entirely optional. And any context you needed for the story of the campaign was shown in the campaign and not relegated to the codex. The codex served to enrich in the narrative, not be the narrative. You didn't need to read the codex to necessarily understand what was going on. For an outside example, let's take Halo Combat Evolved and The Fall of Reach. You didn't need to read The Fall of Reach to understand what was going on in Halo Combat Evolved. And if you read The Fall of Reach before playing Halo Combat Evolved, you were rewarded with a greater sense of context and a deeper story, which, while not necessary, adds a bit of flavor to Halo CE's story. Meanwhile, in this image from Doom Eternal, you're completely left in the dark unless you read the codex or you play way further into the game. Now let's look at this image from the context of someone who has played the game. As you know, the Doomslayer gets these coins from defeating Guardians of Hell Priests. Even with this knowledge, there are still problems. Who was this priest's guardian? Why didn't we get to fight him? Why was this vital context to the story not explained in the beginning of the game? Doom 2016 did a better job of establishing why you are in the situation that you are. You wake up in the middle of a science facility in a sarcophagus. You're just as confused as the Doomslayer. Then you get this sweet little nugget of context.
We have to contain this.
It's not much, but it's enough to understand that you're a demon-slaying badass that was contained by the demons of hell, and now you've been set free. A little bit of context within the game itself goes a long way. And that's one of Doom Eternal's biggest missteps when it comes to story. It wants to act like it has this great, grand scale story without giving you the proper context for it. It's basically, woohoo, I'm pounding on old people and somehow that's stopping the forces of hell. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing it, but I'm doing it. And then there's the Betrayer. Single-handedly one of the biggest wasted opportunities in the Doom franchise so far. In 2016, this guy was hyped up to be a very important character in the Bethesda Doom mythos. A flawed warrior who sold out his people to bring his son back from the dead.
Relegated to a single cutscene and never heard from again.
Doom 2016 made the setup for the sequel to have a decent amount of drama. And sure, there's high stakes with hell besieging the planet Earth, but high drama is always better than high stakes. And it's this reason as to why Dragon Ball will always be superior to Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super.
Fight me, you fucking nerds.
Chapter 4. Downgrades. With all the improvements Doom Eternal has made, it also has a lot of downgrades. Like for instance, the multiplayer content. No snap map, no classic multiplayer, only one game type, excluding Invasion because that's more of a game type for campaign, no multiplayer exclusive weapons, and very shallow customization. Doom Eternal's battle mode is very shallow on offerings compared to Doom 2016's multiplayer. 2016 had 9 maps for multiplayer when it launched, and as of now has 18. Battle mode had 6, and has since gained 1 map. Doom Eternal's offerings for multiplayer are pitiful and are hardly worth the time in my opinion. Now for glory kills. Glory kills this time around are a lot tamer versus 2016. They're also slower and less interesting, especially berserks in the slow department. Normal glory kills are typically just 1-2 punches with the occasional Doom Blade, and no real variation to them. Whereas in 2016, you're hyper-extending limbs, beating people with their limbs, ripping off jaws, ripping out tongues, gutting a mancubus with a chainsaw, etc. Out of all these so far, the chainsaw has suffered the worst. Unless you take into consideration the third-person animations. These seem cool. I wonder how Doom Eternal evolves these.
If this isn't a total downgrade, I don't know what the fuck is.
And I know what you're gonna say. Rev, if you're so concerned about glory kill speed, why don't you just pick the rune that makes glory kills faster? Oh my sweet summer child. That rune was shit in Doom 2016, and it's still shit in Doom Eternal. I'd rather not waste a fucking rune slot over something so cosmetic. Literally any other rune, including other ones I despise, are better than the faster glory kill rune. Chapter 5. Too much of a good thing. Doom Eternal has a philosophy of being maximal on everything. Gameplay, music, gore. Well, not so much gore, really. Kinda underwhelming. But still. Monster count, enemy roster, difficulty, etc. And it's often criticized for being very overwhelming. You have about 27 new monsters to fight. Every single weapon has been overhauled to do something completely different in at least one mod. There's a whole new set of equipment at your disposal. There's 2 new added power weapons. The Doom Eternal music is heavier than ever, although I have no complaints there. The game is absolutely jam-packed with so much stuff that it almost feels like id was just throwing shit at a wall and hoping to see what sticks. And at first you think, oh wow, this is a lot of content, I'm getting a lot of bang for my buck. Until you realize that there are some things that really didn't need to be added. Like for instance, for a sandbox-focused game like Doom Eternal, where every weapon serves a specific purpose, there's quite a few redundant weapons, especially in the power weapon category. You've basically got 4 weapons that basically serve the same purpose of, I don't want to fight you right now. There's the one you only use on fodder enemies because you need ammo. There's the one you only use on fodder enemies because it's a fucking disappointment. There's the one that's completely redundant, and the only one that matters. They all basically serve the same purpose of being, I don't want to fight you buttons. The chainsaw sort of gets a pass because while at full charge it can serve that role, it also serves an alternative role of replenishing your ammo. The Unmaker is easily the most disappointing gun in the entire game. Not only is it the most weak sauce power weapon I have ever used, thus making all the work you put into unlocking the Slayer gates all the more insulting, but it also disrespects the lineage of its older brother from Doom 64 because not only was it overpowered, which you could forgive because it was like a secret weapon, but they also changed it from this really cool looking hell-based gore gun to this lame generic heaven-based pew-pew laser BB gun. As for the Crucible, it's cool in concept, but in execution, I get what they were going for, like a super powerful bladed weapon that can one-shot any enemy. Besides the Marauder. And frankly, for the cost of one use, you don't really get that much bang for your buck. And of course, you're only going to be using it on fucking cyber demons. And of course, the Marauder shield blocks this weapon too, which frankly it shouldn't. As a matter of fact, the Crucible could have been a weapon specifically designed for the Marauder. That, at the very least, could have given the Crucible a more specialized role in the sandbox, but that would be, I don't know, smart. Like, imagine sword fighting with the Marauder, your Crucible against his. That would be fucking sick. But instead, the Crucible is left to just be squandered as this weird hybridization of not being necessarily as good as the BFG, but also not necessarily being as bad as the Unmaker. It lacks any sense of true specialization. Now, the BFG is objectively the best out of these 4 weapons. While they nerfed the ammo down from 3 to 2, it can still clear entire rooms and distract the Marauder enough for you to kill it with a rocket launcher. It is quite literally the most cost-efficient weapon out of all the 4 power weapons you get. You could cut out the Crucible and the Unmaker and you wouldn't be missing out on much. Then there are the monsters and the encounters. Like I said before, encounters with these monsters go on for way too long, and Doom Eternal has been criticized for that. It's not necessarily that these encounters are hard or difficult, it's just that they go on for way too long and just end up being a slog and stop being fun. A phrase I always live by is, it's better to be short and sweet than long and bitter. I'd rather have short but very sweet, very polished encounters rather than what Doom Eternal is offering. And don't get me wrong, not all encounters in Doom Eternal are like this. There are quite a few encounters in Doom Eternal that are very fun. The really long encounters are like that girl you try hitting on at a party that just won't shut up about her ex-boyfriend. Okay, I get it, I just want to go home, please let me go. And with the amount of monsters that can appear in any given arena, it can get very crazy. Some would even say a little too crazy and overwhelming. This is probably due to trying to overcompensate for the additional movement abilities like the meat hook and dash. Which leads me to my next point. Combat in this game is way overtuned. The combat in Doom Eternal is just so fine-tuned to the point of being excessive, making the job of the player just barely manageable. Overall, this philosophy of maximizing everything in Doom Eternal is the game's biggest flaw. They have everything dialed up to the maximum of 10 when it would be okay to dial it down to a 9 or hell, even an 8. They want Doom Eternal to be a game where you think about your combat decisions, but at the same time they have this counterintuitive, crazy, chaotic combat that prevents you from thinking. But that about concludes my video on Doom Eternal. If you like it, be sure to like, subscribe, and head over to my Discord so you never miss a video, because YouTube's notification system is hot fucking garbage. This is Revenge, and I hope to hear from you soon.